What is up, my bloomin' nerds? Okay, so I'm supposed to read this book for English class. I just started it. There are no free audiobooks. I have checked. So I figured, hey, give to those people who are like me. Even though they could probably read it better than I could. Just kidding. But seriously. Okay, so I'm reading Every Breath You Take by Anne Rule. It's a true story. If you have the book, then follow along, you know. You could probably read faster than I could. I will. Okay, one thing that stood out. I liked this. I really did. Was that they did the song lyrics in there. Every breath you take, every move you make, I'll be watching you. Song lyric. Sting. Okay, so there's a lot of characters, as you can tell. And these are real people. I mean, look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Ooh. All of those are people. All of those are just characters. This is one big world we're living in. It's based on a true story, so. Wow, that's crazy. A lot of people involved, yes. I'm not reading the author's note. Okay. Part 1. November 1997. Okay, so I'm gonna read chapter 1 to 6. That's about 10% of the book. I'm supposed to be 50. Please. Take it from me, do not procrastinate. This is what happens when you procrastinate. You have to read it to a webcam. And people are gonna see those. This'll be this is my video. Yep. This is the one I'm posting online. My bookmark that says where I'm at. 'Cause that's where I'm at. Right at the beginning. And then these were supposed to be goals. Look at that. Goals that I've already failed. Okay. So I'm supposed to basically, if I want to get 67% in tonight, that's page 293. Of course, I'll do it in like certain like sections. So right now I'm doing chapter 1 to 6. Notice if these videos come out close together. This is due really soon. Okay, where we're at. Chapter 1. And my pronunciation might be a bit wrong, but I'm in high school. And they don't teach me much. That's a lie. They teach me a ton of stuff. They do, though. Some things. 'Tis but a scratch. Oh, if my English teacher finds this, she's gonna be so disappointed in me. I'm sorry. I'm gonna say this right away. I'm sorry. Just full disclosure. I'm sorry for everyone who watches this video. Because this is already a 4-minute intro. I'm sorry. Let's get going. Chapter 1. Friday, November 7th, 1997. I know numbers. It's 1997. Back a full 21 years? Yeah, 21 years. That's crazy. And you were born 97? What about November 7th, 1997? That'd be... let's not get down that road. Friday, November 7th, 1997, was an ordinary day in Sarasota, Florida. Or so it seemed. It was a weekday, and the morning began with the sun burning golden in an azure sky. But as one enthusiastic resident remarked, the sun is always shining, and every day is beautiful in Sarasota. It took me a while to realize that I didn't have to take advantage of the days the sun shone the way I used to in Connecticut. I could stay inside and read because there would always be another perfect day. And another. And another. But later on this November day, clouds moved in over Sarasota. They were a peculiar leaden gray-purple shading to black, full of unpredictable electrical impulses that made one's hair stand on end. It was going to rain, but it wouldn't be a soft rain. It would surely be rain that thudded against the earth with a vengeance, forcing trees and bushes to the ground with the sheer weight of water, pounding the grass flat. The entrance to the Gulf Gate subdivision was flanked by sweeping buff-colored brick walls bearing its name. But that was the limit of Gulf Gate ostentation. In November, the jacaranda trees planted there 4 decades ago were a froth of peach-colored blossoms so lovely that they could not be real. Many of the summer flowers were faded, save some bougainvillea. That is surely wrong. Do you want to know that word? Go look it up. Can't do. And residents planted petunias, I do know, and impatiens to carry them through the winter until the late summer sun and molten heat dried them. Once a family neighborhood where children played, Gulf Gate was home now to many older couples and widows who kept their shades drawn and hired yardmen to mow their lawns and prune their glossy-leafed trees into round orbs that looked like green plastic. Gulf Gate was close enough to Bee Ridge Road and I-75 for easy shopping and access to downtown Sarasota, but it was quiet. The streets hushed and almost free of traffic in the middle of a weekday. More often than not, there was no one walking a dog, or even peering out at the street from behind jalousie windows. Those windows whose very name originates in the French word for jealousy. I definitely said that wrong. To see without being seen. But few of the residents watched from their cool rooms because there was nothing to see outside. One woman who lived in Gulf Gate was watchful, almost unconsciously, moving often to the front windows of her home to scan the street for a strange vehicle or for someone she didn't recognize approaching her house. She had good reason to be leery, although she and her husband had taken every precaution to keep their address secret. Most of the homes in Gulf Gate were owner-occupied, not lavish, but very comfortable L-shaped ramblers, painted in the soft pastels of the Florida Gulf Coast, peach and pink, and even lavender, sunrise and sunset colors. Many had Florida rooms and swimming pools to make up for Gulf Gate's distance from Sarasota Bay. Although the neighborhood was far away from the beach, the November air was always drenched with the salty, clean smell, caught in the wind as it raced east toward the Atlantic Ocean. Much like the rest of Gulfgate, Markridge Road was a wide, tree-lined street with single-story houses set on small, perfectly groomed lots. The white rambler with the yellow door and matching shutters in the 3100 block had once been the cherished home of an elderly couple. By 1997, they were both dead, leaving their house and its furnishings to their son. Most of the time he lived in a northern state and rented out the Markridge house. He had changed nothing. The place was frozen in a time warp with furnishings that were modern 3 decades earlier. All the furniture, even the knickknacks, dated back to the 60s, one former renter recalled. But there was a warmth about that house. Everything was still there, even their old sheet music and books, just the way they left it. We enjoyed that when we lived there. The couches and chairs reflected the tastes of another time, but they were comfortable. The appliances were decades old, too. The refrigerator was avocado green, and the stove bright yellow. But they worked. The phone, bolted to the kitchen wall above the dishwasher, had a rotary dial. It took a lot longer to make a call than a push-button phone, but until November 7, that was merely inconvenient and not disastrous. The young couple who moved into 3120 Markridge Road in September 1997 had the look of dependable tenants, and they seemed to be pleased with the house, even though they had 6 children and would have to squeeze to fit everyone in. They said they'd moved from Texas when the husband got a big promotion and they needed someplace to live in a hurry. Looking at their adorable bunch of toddlers, the landlord couldn't say no to them. He decided he could forego occupying his parents' house for one winter. The new renters had an excellent credit history, and they were attractive. Jamie Bellish, don't hate on me if I get the names totally messed up. Jamie Bellish was big and burly with a wide grin and the innate charm of a seasoned salesman. His wife, Sheila, was delicately pretty and very tiny and blonde. Jamie did most of the talking while Sheila seemed a little nervous. Well, the landlord figured she had reason to be, with all those children to care for. The toddlers were winsome and totally captivating, and it was obvious that their parents adored them. The older girls' names did not seem to fit them. The older sister, 13, was called Stevie, and she hovered over the babies as if she was a second mother to them. The other sister was a year younger, and her name was Daryl. Odd. Why would anyone give boys names to 2 very pretty girls? Jamie Bellish explained that they were in the process of building a much larger home in Sarasota, so they could make do in a cramped quarters until their house was finished in the spring. No one in Sarasota knew that the couple had left a dream house 1,200 miles behind them in San Antonio. It had been their ideal house in a wonderful neighborhood, so large that the Mark Ridge rental would fit inside 3 times over. They had barely had the chance to live in it when they felt a desperate urgency to move. And move they had under cover of darkness. Only a handful of people in San Antonio knew where Jamie and Sheila and their 6 children were. They agreed it was best to tell no one except for their closest friends and relatives, including the couple who helped them move out of Texas in the dead of night. Sheila's family knew where they were in Sarasota and had their phone number, but not their street address. This one's staying up. But in time, they could come out of hiding. It hurt Jamie and Sheila not to be in contact with so many people they loved. To contemplate holidays without those who were so important to them, cutting off her life so abruptly was akin to cutting off her arm. Sheila only hoped that everyone understood that she had no choice. Sarasota was a beautiful place to live, and thousands of people had chosen it because of that. There was a magical blending of sea and land merging so easily that it was difficult to see where Sarasota Bay ended and the sandy shoreline began. All the way south from Tampa, little lakes and rivers were mirrors reflecting the blue sky, and the soaring Sunshine Bridge rose like a giant roller coaster over Tampa Bay. But it was dark when the Bellish convoy crossed it. They hadn't realized how high they were. Had her circumstances been different, Sheila would have loved the colorful history of Sarasota and the way the city embraced the arts. She still looked forward to exploring it with her girls and the babies when things were better. Although Ringling Brothers no longer wintered there, 17 other circuses did, and many circus folk lived there permanently. Ringling Brothers had thanked Sarasota with a wonderful art museum and a college. There were sandcastle contests, blues and jazz festivals, book fairs, local dramatic productions, and Broadway plays on tour, and the venerable Sarasota Opera House, where the great Pavarotti once performed. Every season in Sarasota was packed with all manner of celebrations. Sheila loved to read, and the new Sarasota library was huge and airy and filled with sculptures and soaring moguls. Marina Jack's in downtown Sarasota, just off Route 41, also known as the Tamiami Trail, was the kind of restaurant Sheila would enjoy. With its circling staircase and magnificent water views. Someday, perhaps. For now, she and her younger children were entranced with simpler things, like the tiny, tiny dust-colored lizards that darted from leaf to leaf and scuttled under bushes so quickly they almost seemed to be figments of their imaginations. The cost of living was higher than in San Antonio. The rent on their house was a rather shocking $2,300 a month. But Jamie and Sheila had chosen Sarasota because it might be a safe place to hide and eventually start over. One day they hoped to be able to be in contact with the people they loved, but for the moment, they couldn't do that. They could give their address to very few people. And even that was a commercial mailing service, a suite that was really a locked mailbox in a mall. They might as well have been in a witness relocation program. Although both Sheila and Jamie came from loving, extended families, they were essentially alone. James Joseph Bellish was an ex-Marine, still saddled with his childhood nickname in his mid-30s. Although he no longer looked like a Jamie. He looked more like a football linebacker. Jamie was a detail man. A pharmaceutical salesman for Finzer. And he was very good at it. An asset to the company. The very nature of his career meant that he had often had to travel away from home to call on physicians in their offices along the west coast of Florida. It wasn't hard to sell Finzer products, especially when the emergence of Viagra, but he still had to make his rounds. Jamie had been with Finzer for a long time, and when he asked for a transfer out of San Antonio, the company accommodated him and gave him the Florida territory, a promotion. They even arranged to buy his house in, I'm just gonna call it Bourne, Texas, for the man who would replace him. Sheila Bellish was 35. She had worked in an attorney's offices since she was 18 and had held an extremely responsible position in the law offices of Soles and Wallace in San Antonio for years. But now she was a full-time mom. There was no question at all of her going to work outside the home. She had more than enough to do. If she was discouraged at the prospect of fitting everyone into the Markridge house and being alone with the children, while Jamie was on the road, she didn't complain. She did what she had to do, hoping always that their lives would become safer and calmer as time passed. Sheila had no friends in Sarasota when they arrived in September, but she was working on that. She had always had friends, and it saddened her to have to leave so many behind without an explanation, although she suspected most of them knew why she had fled. Deeply religious, Sheila and Jamie were attending services at the Sarasota Baptist Church. It was a huge church with an active outreach program, and they were made welcome there. It was a start. They were rebuilding their lives, and she knew she could make new friends. And so, November 7th was an ordinary day. But only in the context of Sheila Bellish's life. In truth, there was no ordinary days for Sheila. She had lived with fear so long that it seeped like acid into any fleeting serenity she might attain, corroding her thoughts, sending jets of adrenaline through her veins. No matter how the sun shone or how balmy the winds wafting off the bay, Sheila never really felt safe unless she was inside the house with the doors and windows tightly locked against the world. Those who didn't know her well wondered if she might be just a little paranoid. Those who knew her story understood, but they were far away, and they didn't know how to find her. It was safer that way. Safer for them, and safer for Sheila, Jamie, and their 6 children. Just 2 months earlier, Jamie and Sheila had lived in Bourne, Texas, a country-like suburb. Again, any pronunciations wrong? I'm sorry. A country-like suburb northwest of San Antonio, where they owned their wonderful new home. Now it seemed as though they had never lived there at all. Maybe it had been too perfect to last, but Sheila still had Jamie, and he loved her and protected her and their babies. He had begun the paperwork to adopt Stevie Lay and Daryl Lay, Sheila's teenage daughters, by her former husband, Alan. They had their difficulties trying to get naturally rebellious teenagers and a long-time bachelor on the same wavelength, but Sheila believed things would work out. On November 7th, 1997, Jamie was on the road south of Sarasota, planning to visit several doctors' offices for Finzer. It was important that he familiarize himself with his new territory and potential clients in West Florida. It was Friday, and he had promised to be home long before it was dark. They would have the weekend together. Sheila had no doubt they would spend the rest of their lives together. She was half right. Stevie Bellish, 13. Yeah, I've been saying like that. Yeah, Bellish, 13, was petite and small-boned like her mother, although she had her father's facial features with his dark hair. It was not difficult to say where she got her superior intelligence, because both Sheila and Alan, her father, were very smart. Stevie and Daryl, who were blonde, Stevie and Daryl, who was blonde like Sheila, had always excelled in school and in sports. But they had been through a lot for anyone as young as they were. Their childhoods hadn't been easy. Now Stevie was in a wonderful mood as she hurried home from junior high school shortly before 4 p.m. that Friday. "I heard that a boy I liked was going to ask me out," she remembered, "and I wanted to tell my mom. The front door was unlocked. That was strange. Her mother was adamant that they all locked the doors when they left, and even when they came back in after taking the garbage out. She didn't have a lot of rules, but that was one she insisted on. So it was unusual for the front door to be unlocked. Afterward, Stevie would remember that she couldn't make sense out of the first thing she saw when she walked into the front room. All of the babies were standing in the hallway, crying as if their hearts would break. Her mother never let them cry. She always picked them up and soothed them. For some reason, they had no clothes on. Nothing but the little life vests they wore when they were in the swimming pool in the Florida room. Their faces were swollen from sobbing. Stevie thought they must have been crying for a long time. What made the least sense to Stevie were the funny patterns of dark red specks on the baby's skin, some in their hair and on their feet. Some of them had swaths of the same color, as if someone had dipped a brush in red paint and then daubed at their skin. Shock and disbelief often block the mind from accepting what the eyes perceive. Even so, Stevie's dread was so great that there was a thunderous pounding in her ears. She patted the wailing toddlers absently and went looking for her mother, calling out for her as she moved through room after room. Her own voice seemed to echo and bounce back from the walls. Stevie went out in the backyard and found no one there. She skirted the swimming pool in the Florida room and saw the baby's diapers inside their plastic pants on the table beside the pool, still shaped like their bodies. That wasn't strange. Her half-brothers and sister swam naked. If their diapers were still dry, her mom would just put them back on after they swam. But she hadn't done that. All of their little bottoms were bare under their life jackets. Stevie couldn't figure out what was going on. She kept calling for her mother and no one answered. There was a funny smell in the house too. A hard, sweet, iodine, metallic odor. A smell Stevie could not recognize. You're gonna hate me. Chapter 2. It was a decent sized chapter. Not really. You're gonna hate me, because I'm trying to get to chapter 6. This is gonna be like, how long? Okay. If worse comes to worse, I'll stop this video early and title it something else. So, North. Past me for being an idiot. Chapter 2. It was only by the purest luck. Just for you guys. Just for you guys. I have no clue about this word. No clue. No clue. No clue. But Google them also. Okay. Pronounce. Do I dare use YouTube? Okay, I'll use the dictionary one. Sure. It was only by the purest luck a perfect... like a dip. What the heck?
Synchronicity.
Synchronicity. Well, now it makes sense. Now synchronicity. A perfect synchronicity that Sheila Blackthorne and Jamie Bellish met in the first place. But the same could have been said about the way Sheila met Alan, and her first marriage had nothing pure or perfect about it. Maybe it was all a crapshoot. And if the marriage worked, it was probably because both partners tried hard to make it work. Sheila Walsh Van Hout Blackthorne Bellish. That's a long name. Hey, what's your name? Oh, but me? And you're just thinking of that moment in the Sweet Life of Zach and Cody. Esteban. His name's like 1,000 words long. My name? Sheila Walsh Van Hout Blackthorne Bellish. I am not making fun of Sheila. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just... 6 words. 6... Oh my gosh. That's a lot. I have 3. And that's including my middle name. Take that out. 2. Sheila Walsh Van Hout Blackthorne Bellish had been blessed with a quick mind, beauty, and a personality that drew people to her. But she shared with her mother a curse that seemed to dictate she would not find happiness in love. Sheila was Irma. That's a name. Verma Jean's 4th child. Verma Jean Williams, called Jean, was raised in Biloxi. I don't think that's right, but I'm just gonna skip it. Biloxi, Mississippi. Great Depression, and like the majority of her children of her generation learned early to dread poverty. As you should. Clennis Pearl Underwood Williams and Charles A. Williams were not to be together long. Jean's father was murdered when she was only a little girl. Stabbed to death, although she never really learned the circumstances of his murder. Later, Clennis Pearl married Julius Pettus. Jean had a brother, Charles Jr. I'm sorry. I'll continue reading. I'm sorry. Charles Jr. and 3 half-sisters, Julie, Betty, and Teresa. During the 1930s and the Second World War, the Petuses we're gonna go with that one, operated a trailer park. That was long before trailers were called mobile homes. Jean grew up. This is where I'm definitely breaking new ground, so it was once bad, it's now even worse. I'm sorry. Jean grew up to be a pretty blue-eyed teenager with perfect features and fair, delicate skin that seemed almost transparent. She married Dwayne Anderson in the late 40s when she was only 15. Dwayne was in the army and the Korean War loomed. Jean gave birth to 2 boys, Danny when she was 17 and then Tawny. The marriage died partially of its own weight, but mostly because Jean was too young when she married Dwayne, and neither of them could deal with the responsibilities of real life. Oh, there is a typo. Everyday problems smothered any magic there might have been. But Jean was a worker, and she took care of her boys. She grew up in Biloxi and Gulfport, 12 miles west along the Gulf Coast. She went, and she felt at home there. She worked for years as a waitress, and after she was of age, as a bartender. Jean's second husband was exciting, and their courtship very romantic. She met Francis Anthony Walsh Jr. when he was stationed at Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi. And she was a young divorcee. Choose one. With 2 little boys. Frank, was very handsome, a short, muscular man, which made him ideally suited to his assignment as an Air Force fighter pilot. Born on Valentine's Day, 1940, Frank was from Westport, Connecticut. A different world from Jean's life in Mississippi. At 20, he was a few years younger than Jean, but she was so attractive that it didn't matter to him, nor did he mind that she came with 2 little sons. Frank was often away, and when the Vietnam War came along, he went overseas, and Jean prayed that he would come back to her. She kept working as a waitress. It was hard work, and her muscles ached, her feet hurt from long shifts. Jean gave birth to 4 daughters while she was married to Frank Walsh. Mary Catherine was first born in July 1961. Sheila Leigh was... Okay. Sorry. Back to the story. Not a story. This actually happened. Sheila Leigh was Jean's next baby. She was born on October 19th, 1962, while Frank was stationed in Sheila was such a tiny boy. June fussed over her, worried about her, and watched her sleep to be sure she was breathing. But Sheila had a feistiness in them. June thanked God that both her little blonde daughters were healthy. But when Jean's next baby, Kellyanne, was born in November 1963, she had a serious valve defect in her heart and lived only 19 days. Oh, we buried her on the day that President Kennedy was shot. Oh, that's horrible. Jean would remember. Jean cried for weeks and asked God why. Oh, Jean cried for weeks and asked God why he had taken her baby away. She had always been somewhat histrionic, acting out her emotions when she was heartbroken or grief-stricken. Heaven knows she sometimes thought she had more to bear than any 3 women. Jean's tragic bosses kept anyone from criticizing her dramatic outbursts. That was just the way she was. Her first son, Donnie, seemed... What? I thought Danny was the first son. That's what it said. So confusing. See, reading aloud now I know what it's saying. If he lies, not quite like Grandmother Moolah, though. Y'all don't get that. Never mind, I'm just gonna back away. Proceed. Okay, I'm just doing chapter 1 and 2 because this is already 40 minutes long. Wow, I knew I was so later, but geez, aloud I'm worse. Oh my gosh, it shows pictures. This is so sad. That's what... Sorry. Just in my head. Don't mind me. Okay. What was I? Her first son, Donnie, seemed to be as sensitive as she was. As Frank worked his way up through the Air Force ranks to major, he remained as excited as always. But he drank a great deal, and half the time he was flying somewhere far away. His service obligations meant he was gone most of the time, and he never seemed to be there when Jean needed comfort. And when he was around, she got pregnant despite birth control pills and an IUD. As time passed, Jean had to accept the fact that Frank was an alcoholic. She had seen enough drinkers when she tended bar to recognize the signs. But she avoided facing it until she had to. Even so, she still loved him. Sometimes the Walshes traveled from base to base, leaving Mississippi behind for assignments in Kansas and South Dakota. Jean dealt with the rigors of government housing at Forbes Air Force Base, a SAC base for B-52s and tankers in South Dakota. And with raising 4 children alone, she found she was pregnant once again. She had taken precautions and thought that couldn't be possible, but the obstetrician, as close as I'm gonna get, on the base, said it was true. In order for the baby to have a chance to survive, he removed her IUD, warning Jean that she would probably abort the baby, or worse, it might be born blind or developmentally disabled. I am dying to know what... Oh? An IUD is an intrauterine device. It's a T-shaped piece of plastic inserted into the uterus to provide birth control. It lasts from 3 to 6 years and is over 99% effective. It's the good stuff, I guess. It's plastic, though, and I can't imagining that. He removed that. Okay, Jean flew to Mississippi to deliver her 6th child. Carrie Bridget was born in June 1967, another baby girl, when Frank had hoped for a boy. She was alive and perfectly normal. Oh, how did I do the voice? She was the most beautiful baby I ever saw, Jean recalled. Frank insisted on spelling her name the male way, Carrie instead of Carrie. Oh, Kerry, like Terry, but with a K. Instead of Carrie, like the Stephen King novel. Okay. Jean was just relieved that Carrie was healthy. She finally allowed herself to believe that this little girl was going to survive. Carrie had fiery red hair. And sometimes a temper to match. She could be stubborn too. Carrie was never as relentlessly strong-willed as Sheila was. Her big brother Danny refused even to hold Carrie for months. "She's gonna die too," he said, "and I don't want to get to know her." Oh, it's so sad. Why is this so sad? Carrie didn't die. She had very little memory of living in South Dakota, but her mother told her she had fallen down the steps in her walker when she was 6 months old. I'm changing up this voice way too much. I just grabbed her up and headed to the infirmary, Jean said. And I ran in shouting, "My baby! My baby!" It turned out she wasn't hurt at all. Although Jean's younger daughters were 5 years apart in age, they would bond for life. Carrie would grow to be taller than Sheila, but they looked a great deal alike. One blonde, one red-headed. Sheila had bobbed hair and a swath of freckles across her nose. She looked at the world with the same clear blue eyes her mother did. But as small as she was, Sheila was the one among all the children with a backbone of steel. Jean had a tough time disciplining Sheila. One time she ran away, or made a big show of leaving home. She ran into the woods and hid, do you remember? I had just worked 2 shifts and I was exhausted. I knew she was in there and I called to her to come out, and all she would get was a scolding, not a whipping. She didn't budge. I told her that if I had to come in and get her, it would be worse, and she'd get a switching and 3 weeks grounded. She finally came out, and I switched her legs with a branch switch all the way home. It didn't really hurt her. It didn't leave a mark or anything. She wouldn't cry, though. She would just put her chin up. That was Sheila. Where most girls cried, she just set her chin and kept going, refusing to let anyone know that she was sad or scared or intimidated. Even as a grown woman, when she barely reached 5 feet and weighed 98 pounds. Jesus. She's smaller than me. weighed 98 pounds. She had plans and dreams and refused to give up when almost anyone else in her position would have quit. Sheila and Carrie were always into something, sometimes driving their mother to distraction, but often making her smile. One time when Carrie was only about 3, Donnie, their older brother, came to her laughing and laughing. That was before he got sick. Well, too late, Jean said. He said, "Come look at what these little girls are doing." Well, they had stuffed bras and their bathing suits with toilet paper to grow breasts. Jean caught them parading down the street on their way to the corner store. She had to laugh in spite of herself. Carrie had the most imposing paper bosom, although she wasn't more than a little bit of a thing at the time. Carrie idolized Sheila. Whatever she touched, it turned out okay, she recalled. We both had piano lessons, and Sheila played the piano beautifully, but I hid when the teacher came over. She used to watch the boys at football practice and say that she was faster than they were. And she was. She could beat them all in a foot race. Even when... Oh my gosh, it's such a long time until this chapter is over. This is such a long chapter. Okay. So, what I'm gonna do... I'm gonna stop it at now. Because that is such a long period of time. And I doubt anyone wants to watch me reading for an hour. Chapter 2. They don't know that. They do. Even when they had a head start, she was a wonderful softball player, even though she was so tiny. I tried to see that my girls had everything basic they needed, Jean said. I could remember how good it felt to have money go up to the corner store and get a moon pie and an RC cola. And my girls had that too. Jean had the 2 boys by her first marriage and then the 3 girls by Frank, before she had any idea that he was having an affair with an Asian woman in Okinawa. Possibly he married too young and was escaping the responsibility of being the father to 5 children before he was 27. Maybe he simply could not be true to one woman. From time to time, Jean left him, but she came back. What else could she do? She loved him. Jean left Frank twice more, vowing that she could not live with a man who drank. The 3rd time, she didn't come back. Part of her still loved Frank Walsh, but she finally had to accept that he would always be a drinker. She divorced him. Nothing really changed. He stayed in touch almost as much as he had when they were married, and his little girls adored him. Their father was an almost mythic figure. It's midnight here, so what do you want from me? Their father was an almost mythic figure who came flying in from some far-off place they could only imagine and doted on them completely while he was with them. He took them fishing and hiking and for fun trips. Not just nature trips, fun trips. Yeah. And then he was gone again, leaving Jean to administer discipline and take care of their more needs. Jean was only in her early 30s herself. Must have been difficult for her to see her ex-husband with their little girls and wonder if she had made the right choice in divorcing him. That's all I'm reading for this part. Yes, I have stopped at the Jean returned to Gulfport, and if yours is set up like mine, it's page 13. If not, I'm sorry. It's in chapter 2. But that took an hour with like a lot of me stopping or messing up. I'm sorry how bad this turned out, but I'm still gonna do it because I need to read this book. And yeah, I really need to read this book, but it's midnight right now and I'm sick. So that will be all for this episode. Yeah, that was up until page 13 of Every Breath You Take by Anne Rule. It's based on a true story. Love how you can see that's right there. That's not what you were supposed to be able to see. Okay, well, it's the end of the video. I doubt you'll like it, but if you do, you can subscribe. You can like the video if you want. You can also dislike it. Hey, I know it's bad. If you don't think it's bad, then go ahead. Thumbs up. If you think it's bad, I won't feel anything personal against it. I wouldn't even click this video if I was in that position. But hey, I needed to read a book. This was my book. This was my reading. This is my gift to you. I'm sorry if it's bad. So, in other words, end of the video, you can subscribe. Literally, I'm the one posting it, so. And it's the end of the video. You know what that means. I'm gonna do a little awkward dance. This ain't a nerd dance. It's just me being dorky. Okay, so seriously, end of video and pieces. Goodbye, nerds.